Alright. Well, I've been live for 24 minutes. That's gonna confuse the fuck out of me. Oh well. Hey, hi, hello, welcome back, Alexandrian Codex. It's been 1 week. It's actually been 1 week. Holy shit, it's only been a week since I jumped in Minecraft. It's insane to me. Oh. Right, I was watching SG1. God, I love the way my brain works. The way that my brain associates spaces, physical spaces, even like virtual spaces, and how I write memories to my brain. God, I love how it works. Yeah. I was binging Stargate SG1. The episode I was on was where they get replaced by Hanlon? Is that his fucking name? The silly little man who replaces them all with like robot replacements. Yeah, that's the episode I was. Harlan is his name. Oh, what the fuck was I doing in a grander sense though? It don't matter. None of this matters. There we go. That's the attitude I want to carry forward. So yeah, for posterity, I'm doing okay. Finally got my owed thousands of dollars and the money that I had paid unemployment insurance back, so I'm okay financially, at least until early summer, late spring, which is great. I did press E on this, did I? It's right click, it's not E. I've been playing too much Eco. Taking a break from running any tabletop role-playing games right now, which, yeah, mixed feelings. I really enjoy running TTRPGs, particularly the ones we had been running, but I keep pressing E. I keep doing it. This is gonna get very old very fast. So that's a shame. Honestly, what I'm struggling with now is like a sense of scope for my life. Return to fixating and focusing on the general isolation, listlessness, unproductivity, vacuum existing kind of cabin fevery vibes. Which, sucks, but I will happily take over feeling unsure about how I'm going to pay rent or, survive. Oh, God. It's a very dystopic world that we live in. Right? like, isn't it? I don't feel like that's a contentious thing to say or really all that, inspired to say, like, God damn. Ugh. Yeah, there's a lot to be tired by and exhausted by and just completely fucking drained by. Oh. Like, personally, I'm not, like... I'm not at 100%, but I'm back at, like, 50. 55% maybe. I'm, like, nearing a passable level of wellness, which will allow me to engage with causes I care about, speak more about things that aren't just me and how I'm doing, but more like existential, social, political, economic, etc., etc. Things go back to being an insufferable proselytizer in those regards. if I... Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to... Oh, son of a bitch. Why? Why can't we have nice things, huh? Why? Not wearing very good armor, are you, Alex? No. No, not at all. That was kind of intentional. I get too good to you syndrome so badly with games. Like, ooh, can't use those diamonds. You might need them some other time. Is that wind up? Yeah, that's wind up. Oh, this FOV feels limited somehow. Okay, I'll whipple with you. When I used to play with Quake Pro on all the fucking time, even though the bending at the corner of the screen gets like real disorienting. So I've tried to walk it back to like a normal person kind of FOV, but still feels weird. Ah. Yeah. It's very weird living in the United States right now, where so many voices, particularly liberals, are trying to push and act like, all right, we're back to normal, everything's fine, people are getting vaccinated, we got Trump out of the White House, we can go back to brunch, effectively, right? Or, I haven't thought about politics in 3 weeks, this is so refreshing. Like, that kind of fucking sentiment is echoing around right now. It's like, goddamn, I hate you people. I hate this country. It's so disappointing. It's so frustrating when, like here in Seattle, we're supposed to get rain. Not rain, Alex. Snow. Snow today or tomorrow. That's cool. People like snow. But also, our unhoused population are incredibly vulnerable right now. Particularly because of the restrictions on how many can be sheltered in various facilities due to COVID restrictions. All winter we've had tens of thousands of people out on the street without meaningful efforts made by any of the nonprofits that engage with the unhoused population, without really meaningful efforts from the city council. And a few have done some trivial things, but by and large the neolibs aren't doing a goddamn thing. Yeah. So this feeling of I can stop paying attention again is really rubbing me the wrong way. It's like, for fuck's sake. It's not like police violence stopped overnight. Like here in Seattle, the police killed a black man last night. Ooh, but he had a gun and he was violent. Okay. Sure. How often have white men with guns who've been violent been taken in peacefully in the United States? Quite often. If you look statistically at who police are more likely to liberally use lethal force with, and that's troubling. The Seattle Police Department has had, like half a dozen officers confirmed or suspected to be participants in the attempted coup on January 6th. We don't give these people carte blanche. We don't give them the benefit of the doubt. We don't say, oh, well, okay, this one you were good on. No. We say, we critically look at it and question if every possible avenue and every possible alternative had been exhausted. In this case, the man who was killed by the police, who was violent and seems to have lethally injured other people. This was not a new mode of behavior for him. This was not a new demonstrated possibility of action for him. He was someone who pretty categorically needed help and was not given that help. When prior complaints had been made about this individual to the police effectively said, well, call us back if there's more trouble. The police didn't save any lives last night. Sorry, was that last night? Was it the night before? I have no sense of time anymore. They didn't save any lives. They ended one. And I kind of take issue with the fact that the police are just executioners for the property-owning class. Right, I mean, that is their function. And I don't feel that there's really ever a circumstance where violence should be celebrated. If it could have in any other way been avoided. I'm not one to police people. I'm not one to tell people, oh, you shouldn't do what you think is necessary, because I believe in individual agency. I believe that a variety of methods and tactics and approaches are necessary for just human existence, human society, that diversity in tactics, diversity in philosophy, diversity in etc. is part of what makes us so fucking us. Makes us what we are, right? Do I want a diggy hole? I don't really want a diggy hole. 1 and 2, but I will. So the Biden administration's promise that nothing will fundamentally change has so far held to be true. And there's some voices in the center right from the Democrats being like, oh, well, you know, it's only been a month. It's only been 3 years. It's only been 4 years. It's only been etc. They're very good at making excuses for their failures and ineptitudes. And, you know, that's mischaracterizing, actually. It's not a failure on their part to maintain the status quo. It's not a failure on their part to offer platitudes and no materially impactful action. That's not a failure. That's working. That's WAD. That's working as designed. That is the function of the party. That is the function of the ideology. I'm really tired of liberal white men who think that they're socialist, who think that they're leftist, who think to speak on behalf of all leftists to say, oh, this group isn't leftist or isn't leftist enough. People like Ryan Knight, people like Jimmy Dore, who are just fucking podcasters. No gods, no masters, no fucking podcasters, that whole jam. And like, oh, Alex, isn't it a bit hypocritical that you're saying this on a platform that's very similar? Sure. but you shouldn't listen to me. I'm pretty adamant on that. Like, I'm not an expert. I don't think that I hold sway in any way. People who argue online but don't organize materially, don't organize physically, they're ideologues. They're idealists, but they're not actually changing anything. Like, my god, the whole idea of the People's Party is naive in the extreme. You know, the DSA, they're just trying to change the Democratic Party from within and get progressives elected. That's not really socialist. Instead, let's form a new party whose chances are even worse. That's what a true socialist would do. Alright, get out of here with your no true Scotsman horseshit. I don't know who you're trying to impress. Like, picking fights on social media with the biggest leftist organization in the United States, being like, they're not leftist enough. What are you accomplishing here? I mean, like, you're not building anything with these statements. You're not constructively criticizing. You're not offering critique. You're not offering suggestions or alternatives for how growth could or should happen. Instead, you're just grandstanding, trying to win internet points for being more right than whoever the fuck you're subtweeting. I'm very tired. I've lost family in the course of this pandemic. I've lost friends in the course of this pandemic. And as things stand, I'm probably going to lose more. Sure, older folks are getting vaccinated. Sure, first-line people are getting vaccinated. But we're almost at 500,000 deaths. My chances of being vaccinated, and I'm in the city with the second highest willingness to be vaccinated. Seattle's somewhere around 68%, which is below San Francisco at like 72, 76%. Those are the two highest willingnesses to be vaccinated in the United States. Both of those are like barely passable. You know, my chances are I won't get a vaccine until late spring, probably. Young people are gonna keep dying. Old people are gonna keep dying. Then people are gonna act like this was some fucking victory in how we managed to pull this back or handle this, and that we need to... A return to normalcy is not only good, but required and patriotic, and we'll do it in the memory of the people who couldn't keep going. Like, the way that capitalism is gonna use this is just disgusting. Okay, this does have fortune on it, good. And the way it's already been used, like, fucking hell. For the first 6 months, really, the way that every goddamn advertiser was like, we care, there's a pandemic going on right now. It's very scary. We're all very sad. You should buy our product or use our service. They're like, we care. No, you don't. You don't care. You're a for-profit institution with no accountability for human lives, human welfare, or anything else. You're just doing this to win image. And, I mean, I'm speaking literally about losing friends to the pandemic and family. That's not even touching on the massive levels of suicides that have been related to the pandemic. But we're not going to recover from this for a long time. A lot of newscasters and programs are focused on how financially we're not going to recover, or how long it's going to take for financial recovery for people, for the nation, for companies, really, more than anything else. And that's going to take years, even with the most optimistic estimates. Real economic recovery never happened after the collapse of 2008. The people who were failed, the people who slipped through the cracks, were never really resuscitated. Were never really given dignity. They were just kind of abandoned. Because stock market line go up, that mean everything okay, America great, America number one, and if you're not failing, or if you're not succeeding, it's a personal failure, not a systemic failure, not an institutional failure. That kind of dogma, that kind of philosophy is exactly what's going to happen in the years following this pandemic. What's particularly fucked are like the long-term health effects this is gonna have on people, mental and physical health effects. Folks who have gotten COVID, many have never recovered fully, have long-lasting, maybe permanent damage. That's fucking horrifying. And like, okay, let's say everybody got vaccinated in the United States. What's to stop this from happening again? Nothing. What steps would we do to make sure it didn't affect as many people next time? We wouldn't. We would do things exactly the same way. The unrepentant attitude of policymakers, of people in places of authority, is truly deafening and truly exhausting. Oh, we just gotta open back up, gotta get back to business. Oh, think about how small businesses are being affected. Fuck small businesses, you don't care. If you cared, you would suspend rent and mortgage payments on a federal level and retroactively give people survival payments. Or, if you don't want to give people survival payments, literally deliver food, medicine, and basic necessities to everyone in the nation. You have a military well-funded enough to occupy half the fucking planet. You tell me you can't retool that for a genuinely humanitarian force? You can. It's a lack of willingness, it's a lack of desire, it's a lack of care and prioritization. So, like, I don't know, I'm talking about the same shit I've been talking about for almost a year now. None of this is new. None of this is really, like, eye-opening. And this is just a confirmation of, like, yeah, when the Democrats take over, they're not really going to change things or make things better. They're gonna promise $2,000 and then be like, no, what we meant was $1,400. And now it's, well, no, it's only $1,400 for people who made less than a certain amount back in 2019. We gotta means test this. It's a hellhole I live in. The United States is... This is the bad place. This is the bad place. And the likely outcome of the Trump impeachment hearings right now, he's not going to be impeached. I'm very pessimistic that any meaningful action will be taken to hold him or any other politician accountable. Because if we do hold on to the exception for free speech in this nation, free speech in this nation has an exception. You can be held responsible for the consequences of your actions and words if you're calling people to do violence, if you're calling people to panic, cause public disturbance. Those are actually crimes. potentially, in the United States. If politicians aren't held to that account, then they won't be held to that account because that's a standard almost every Republican and many Democrats are in violation of. And this would set a standard that they can actually be held accountable for their words and actions. No. They would rather be selfish, protect themselves, and not try to band-aid this glaring stain that's only going to lead to more instability, more violence, and more lack of faith in the United States government. All of the Democrats will blame the Republicans will blame the Democrats, but in effect it'll just embolden individuals like Trump, like many people in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. There are more alt-right, far-right, fascist people in the House than in the Senate. It's just going to embolden them to take similar actions. Spurring on violence without directly participating, and therefore obfuscating their responsibility in what happened. I don't know. I can't even... There's a lot of liberals going like, oh, I can't imagine they won't. Really? Like, try imagining a little bit more. Just push your imagination. Be a bit more imaginative, because, like, these are the same fucking people who were like, oh, I never could have imagined the Capitol building being stormed by fascists. Like, oh, golly, gee, if only there were a certain group of people warning you for the better part of a year that this was on the table and going to happen. If only certain politicians hadn't broadcast their clear desire to make this happen. If only there were a sign. Even in the hearings in the Senate right now, there's this repeated theme of, how are we supposed to know? Or there's, I never could have imagined this. Or, like, unprecedented. Like, anyone paying attention could have expected this. Anyone paying attention should have expected this. But, God, American exceptionalism is so ingrained in us that bad things don't happen to us. This is America. Right? We're the exception. Bad things happen elsewhere, and then we swoop in and make them worse. But they don't happen to us. It's so like sick and naive, and so many old people have this as like a core tenet of their worldview. Even an unstated, like unrealized tenet of their worldview. It's so disturbing. I wrote today that it's hard to look at the world for any length of time soberly and seriously and not lament. And I did mean it. I did really mean it. This world is... the world that my generation and subsequent generations has inherited is just abysmal. Just truly abysmal. And getting worse. And it's very hard to see how to... Wow, have I even found a single emerald yet? I don't think so. Well, today's the day. It's very hard to imagine things getting better. It's not speaking to a lack of willingness on my part to organize, to participate, to act, far from it. But just... you know, these are seemingly insurmountable challenges and odds and forces which are allayed before me and before us. More people died in the last year than died in the entirety of the Second World War, and the recovery plan is just get people back to work. Vaccinate people and force them back into the workforce. That's... After World War II, you had the fucking GI Bill to compensate these people. Well, during World War II, you had the GI Bill to compensate these people for putting themselves at risk. The American people didn't choose to put themselves at risk. The economic system forced them to be at risk. Like, minimally. Universal healthcare should be the takeaway here. It won't happen, though. It won't happen. I really would be amazed if any substantial reform comes out of the next 4 years. If the United States government or political apparatus responds in any degree of seriousness to the realities of COVID-19. The pandemic, the social and economic collapse accompanying it. I really don't expect it to be treated with any degree of seriousness outside of sanctimony, empty sentiments, and somehow being twisted and coerced into getting people to work. Well, you know, people work during the pandemic. You can work now. Look at all these people who worked at, you know, this worst point in United States history. If they work then, you can work now. Yeah, this is only going to be mobilized for our detriment. If we leave the organization and mobilization to the owning class, the political class, the capitalist class. If we take ownership, if we organize, if we unionize, if we mobilize, then maybe, potentially, things could happen, things could change. But you're not going to get it incrementally, you're probably not going to get it electorally, because so little happens, and has happened in the United States history from electoral politics. Again, I think every possible avenue should be taken in the pursuit of worthy goals. Universal healthcare, having housing, food, education as human rights enshrined in the United States. These are worthy goals that pursuit by almost any means is admirable. I wish so much that were the dominating spirit, and dominating tenet, and dominating call of leftists. Solidarity forever does not mean only when you want to do things the exact same way I do. Solidarity forever does not mean solidarity, but only if I agree with your tactics. If only I agree with your strategy. No, solidarity forever means solidarity forever. It's a very toxic trait we've inherited from the American political consciousness. This idea of perfection. That you need a perfect plan, you need a perfect mode of attack, you need a perfect strategy. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. That if something isn't perfect, we shouldn't bother, we should rethink it, re-strategize. This pursuit of perfection wastes our time, our energy, our lives, really. Because so often, these critiques of a movement or strategy or tactic not being perfect are not made with any intention of being helpful or constructive. They're made with the intent of being aggravating factors, of causing difficulty. Oh, is really all this full with cobble? Wow, how useless. I got a tried and true tactic of government agencies in the United States infiltrating and trying to destabilize leftist causes. Has been in instigating infighting, in purity tests, in these petty, insignificant, am I wearing gold? No. Petty, insignificant differences, like this person isn't militant enough, or the DSA isn't this enough, or I gotta level with you. People who have been on the force the vote train, people who've been pushing the whole, really anything Jimmy Dore says and just accepting it as wholesale truth, and then lashing out at leftists who've spent years organizing, years mobilizing, years growing. You gotta quit listening to white dudes, particularly rich white dudes on social media platforms who profit off of your viewership. You gotta think maybe, just maybe, there's some conflict of interest here, and perhaps this person isn't actually a comrade, but is just profiting off of your ideology. Because if nothing exists outside of capitalism in the United States. Or anywhere, really. If your ideology exists, it can be commodified, it can be fetishized, and if it can be commodified and fetishized, it can be profited off of. Did I really put the arrows away? Guess I did. And if it can be used against you, you gotta be wary about that. I'm not saying everyone's a grifter, but I am saying there are grifters. There are people who are just in it for selfish reasons, selfish motivations, who borrow language, imagery, etc. from leftist causes, from progressive causes, from human dignity and welfare-focused causes, and redirect and reuse those in ways that are abhorrent and counter to the fundamentals of what leftism is about. Or counter to leftist values. This isn't new. One of the greatest sins, the greatest catastrophes of leftism in the United States has been the erasure of its history. The erasure of past generations, of past struggles, of past histories of organizing and counter-organizing in the United States, because there's so many fundamental, vital lessons that past generations learned that if we don't study history, we are not benefiting from their experience, from their knowledge, from their trials, even. Some of the leftists I admire most started out 2020 with some really loose understanding of United States history when it comes to labor movements, labor rights, socialism, etc. But they've studied in great detail with sincere enthusiasm the work that's come before us, and have, you know, I don't want to say wisened up, but yeah, wisened up a little bit to having more fair, balanced, and realistic expectations about what they're up against and what they have to contend with. Because, like, oh my god, what kind of fucking naive idiot thinks that, oh, we just have to start a third party? With what funding? With what organizational apparatus. With the history of parties like the Green Party here in the United States, the Green Party is really soiled the notion of trying to win with a third party for a lot of people. Like, you need wins. You need to prove to people that something is possible. Now, organizations like Socialist Alternative, for example, here in Seattle and a couple other places, have done this in running in local elections, winning in local elections, and winning consistently in local elections, proving that they're non-democratic candidates can and will win. But you can't just manifest the party out of nowhere, call it the fucking People's Party, and expect the same thing to happen. You can't have an organization without a foundation. And if you are just trying to build a foundation, it's not going to happen quickly. So that's part of the philosophy of the DSA, right, is that they're trying to adopt and use the, master's tools to tear down the master's house. And of course, that's a fallacy, and it's been talked about ad nauseum, the ways that doesn't work, or the troubles or difficulties accompanying that. Yeah. Leftist infighting on Twitter particularly is just exhausting, and that's probably the point. Right? Like, trolling is such an easy thing to do. It's a fine art, don't get me wrong. I appreciate a good troll. But, hot damn, dude. Twitter, after the collapse, let's say, of Tumblr, so many of the worst aspects of Tumblr made their way onto Twitter. The well-intentioned but wildly naive progressives, liberals, and leftists just showing their whole ass, sometimes literally. And it particularly, like, the white ones who think that they're woke. The teens, they're alright, but just alright. Social media is not the real world. But what's difficult is social media can manifest in the real world, can manifest as the real world. It can be an incredible tool for organizing, for communicating, for strategizing, but it can also be a huge problem for all of those things. There you go. Aggro on them, thank you. I'll just take that. I follow a Twitter account called Ancient Memes. Ancient Memes is an account that shares memes from the late 2000s, early 2010s, mostly the late 2000s. And, it's cringy as fuck sometimes. Looking back at, like, yep, we thought this shit was funny, or clever, or, like, what have you. But I think that kind of hard introspection and reflection is insanely valuable. I don't really want to fight you right now. I want to kite you through here. They broke my helmet, didn't they? It broke my fucking helmet, yep. Yep. Pigman man because no gold. That kind of introspection, that honest introspection and reflection on who we are, who we've been, is valuable, because I I think one of the most dangerous things to happen to past generations, particularly the baby boomers, is them writing their own history and selectively remembering their own history and treating themselves as socially progressive, as like meaningfully changing so much about the world when they didn't. They didn't. They rode on the coattails of other people. They, you know, stole the movements of minorities and then tangentially acted like they were always involved. Like, Christ, the way boomers talk about the fucking 60s and 70s is the most goddamn exhausting thing in the world. They're like, oh, we fixed all the problems. Did you now? Did you now? And they kind of propagandize. I say kind of. They propagandize it in history that they teach. Taught my generation and other generations. And then that history gets reflected back and they start teaching themselves that same fucking history. These same lessons. As if it were true, because they're hearing it through the History Channel or whatever the fuck else. Yeah. I don't love my country. I don't. I don't love any country. I don't think countries are something you should love. People are things that you should love. People are worthy of your empathy, your compassion, your passion, your loyalty. Nations, things that only exist in our minds and only exist in paper borders, those don't deserve any fucking loyalty, or compassion, or empathy, or affection. Yeah. It's a heartbreaking place to live, the United States. So I don't think old people are evil. Some, yes. All of them? No. Most of them? No. I don't even think like a disproportionate number of them are evil. I just think they're deeply ignorant. And like wildly misinformed. Like the fact that I retweeted something earlier today. Credit scores, you know, those have only existed since like 1989, right? And this this wholesale made-up thing has ruined so many lives in the interim period since the late 80s. Like, the boomers really did just make up a whole lot of bullshit. Massively accumulate wealth, hoard it, keep it to themselves, and then put the next generations in debt, either relative to themselves or literally in debt. And it'd be one thing if it were, like, malicious and evil and intentionally owned it. Like, yeah, we fucked you over, what are you gonna do about it? At least there's some honesty in that. But just the ignorance accompanying it. Oh, we didn't ruin the world. We didn't make capitalism even worse. We didn't continue this downward trend for labor rights and social rights. No, we did good things. We protested Vietnam. Still went. Still killed people in Vietnam. Oh, you know, we did, you know, made it so that racial equality was guaranteed. by the Constitution. Cool. Did you follow up and make sure that it was, like, materially enforced in any meaningful way? Not really? Cool. They just half-assed so much, didn't follow up on it, and just believed the stories that they told themselves about how they were changing the world and what they were changing it to. They didn't fucking follow up, and there was no accountability. And now we have all these old-ass, spoiled-ass motherfuckers running the country, an economy, and really the world, with, like, no internalized conceptualization of personal responsibility outside of, well, when other people fuck up, they should be held accountable, but when I make a mistake, it's not my fault, and I shouldn't be held responsible. Because these little bitches didn't have any responsibility. They didn't have to go into debt to go to college. They didn't have to go to debt to buy homes. It was all affordable back then. And so they hoarded these affordable commodities, creating artificial scarcity, and then started telling next generations that, like, oh, it's expensive, but I paid for it, and you can pay for it on this minimum wage I'm refusing to increase. This house whose value I've just been driving up through artificial scarcity. This college that should be universally free and was when I went to school, but then once my generation got in positions of authority, we changed it for a profit incentive instead. I have a great deal of resentment in my heart for baby boomers. And even generations after them, like, bro, what the fuck? Why didn't you deal with these problems? Why are these problems still problems? If, you know, Gen Z kids have that attitude towards millennials, totally legit, dude. Totally legit. Why didn't we deal with this sooner? We've been trying. Materially, we don't have access to a lot of power or authority. We have been trying to rebuild the foundation for socialist and progressive and labor movements, foundations that were ripped out root and stem over the course of the 20th century. We've been trying to tend our own small gardens of humanity in a world that demonized everything that we thought was good and right and true. We weren't taught about a lot of things that you're taught about in school. We were taught that Columbus was good and etc, etc, etc. We've had to tease apart so many fucking lies and so much misinformation. We could have done better, and you know what? We should have done better. We can still do better than we're doing now, but we got dealt a shit hand just like you, and we tried to lay down some sort of foundation to make it just the eensy-teensy bit easier for you. But no, I think in that respect we failed. We could have done more, we should have done more, and we should still do more. And God, I wish that attitude, I wish that honesty were something that my generation got more often, and that younger generations got more often. Not this horse shit about us being entitled, or ungrateful, or the me generation. Not decades of us being gaslit on public news, public television, time and time again about how we're the problem, how we're ungrateful. Maybe just a little smidge of responsibility for recognizing the way that you fucked up the world and left us holding the bag. And my feelings of vindictiveness, of spite, of rage, of hurt, of betrayal, really, a lot of it comes to betrayal. Takes root in that utter unwillingness to accept responsibility. So when I talk about, and I'm pulling it full circle here, when I'm talking about the Trump impeachment hearings, and I'm saying absolutely not, nothing will happen because the powers that be, politicians, are just intrinsically uninterested in creating a precedent wherein they might be held accountable for their actions. This is why I'm saying that. Not some just knee-jerk feeling, but the documented history and methodology of these people. And now some boomers, some older generations are more reasonable, but they're not typically reasonable if they are in the upper echelons of power. I started crying the first protest I went to in 2020. Crying because I heard the phrase mic check. I didn't think that would be a trigger for me, but it was. Why was mic check a trigger? Because I flash back to the months and months of Occupy Wall Street, the earnest, desperate movement for some sort of accountability during the fucking Obama administration. The tired, desperate movement by people my age and younger to try and force some sort of action, just the consistent violence that they were met with, the consistent disregard and disdain. That made me tear up. I wasn't bawling, but that made me tear up because these were the same fucking people that have been protesting since the late 2000s. Some of these people are the same ones that have been protesting since the 90s. And nothing has meaningfully, substantially changed. The ball has just been kicked down the road. The envelope has just been pushed a little bit more, a little bit more. Language has changed. Performance politics have changed. But materially, nothing has significantly changed. And that is suffocating. Absolutely suffocating. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know what's necessary for change to happen. I wish that I did. But it's never prescriptive. It's never straightforward. It's never easy. I think a key part is getting more people involved, more directly, more consistently, even if it's just talking about the problems that we're facing, even if it's maintaining a national or international dialogue on the dangers of capitalism, the excesses of capitalism, that our real enemies are those who hold power, those who hold wealth, those who maintain these institutions that tear us down, break us down, beat us down, and bleed us dry. I don't know. I mean, that in and of itself won't be the change, right? That'll just help create the social atmosphere for emboldening other people to participate in change. No organization is perfect, right? Not the DSA, not the SRA, not the BSA, not any of these socialist organizations. You're not going to find a perfect organization. You're probably not going to make one. That's no reason to sit out. is things will only get better if you help make them better. Both for the organization and for society as a whole. If you want a better world, if you ache for a better world, if you are tired and exhausted and sad and drained and just distraught at the existence that we have to find inadequate enough, you don't have to settle. I would never ask you to. I want you to fight for a better world. And I'd love it if you did so in organizations like the DSA. If you feel like the DSA aren't socialist enough, if they focus too much on electoralism, if their cooperation or operation within trying to infiltrate the Democratic Party isn't a good strategy, well, Socialist Alternative and other organizations might catch your fancy, and they're great. They're great. Pick one. Start doing something. Even if it's small. Hope you're doing okay. I'm doing... well, I'm alive. Until later, I'm gonna say toodaloo. Take care. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.